Welcome to episode 2 of the £40,000 discounted house. Today we're meeting with the architect to discuss the future potential of this property and, more importantly, getting rid of those ginormous trees. If you haven't already done so, drop us a comment and subscribe. But right now we begin with more problems. This is the dormer. Now, mould and the plaster that was on here. One, look at how thick it is, that's too thick. And two, from there down to there was a 25mm gap behind it, so it all blew off. Very mouldy, hole down there. I mean, just look at the mould. It's just minging, and then it gets even worse. You come in here, look at that. So whilst we're living here, we obviously don't want to feel like it's disgusting, and we can't really be breathing that mould in. So we need to sort that. The bathroom has been cleaned by my stepmom, and yeah, it'll do. It's not to everyone's taste. Horrible plastic on the walls. Never been a fan of that, never will be. This room, if we get the planning agreed, that will extend out at full ceiling height with a pitch roof. So there will be a bedroom over there. But again, this is what the architect's coming round for, to confirm what we can and can't do, or what we're most likely to get agreed with the local council. Because let's face it, if you've watched Clarkson's Farm, councils aren't your best friends. So the boiler problem, this is what you need to know. So if we just all around all the doors, it's very windy outside, so apologies for this, but we'll just go in the garage. In here, all the carpet we stripped out is down there. If we walk into here, this boiler is so old, and it also keeps dumping pressure, so I keep having to fill it up with the loop. Now at first I thought that was a leak. It actually isn't. It's just from where charcoal has been in the corner. Don't ask me why. So somewhere that boiler is dumping pressure and there's a leak, or there's water that's not with the boiler. So it's leaving the system, and that makes me think, are we going to find a bit of mess under the floor? Now, one thing that was picked up on the survey in the hallway, apologies about the man boobs wobbling, this floor bounces and there is a radiator in here. The radiator is there. So I'm wondering if there's a leak somewhere under here where there's a pipe, probably caused the wood to rot, and that could be what is causing the floor to bounce. Of course, the only way to check that is to lift the floor. So that's going to be another job that we start. And at the minute, we've not really done much other than just strip walls. And that's because I don't really know what I can and can't do. Because if we're going to put planning permission in, and after I've had a chat with the architect, at least I've got some sort of indication then to, yes, you might be able to do this, there's a good chance of that, and I can start thinking, right, well that wall's coming down, so we're not going to paint this, and go from there. So yeah, massive project ahead. Once I've had a chat with the architect, I'll hopefully update you all a bit more. Whilst we waited for Steve from Cabinet Eye to arrive, Sophie's mum began painting the kitchen cabinets. This was just to brighten up the room and make it a tad more airy. We also had another skip dropped off in preparation for cutting the trees and demolishing the greenhouse. So, after the meeting with the architect, things have now changed. The extension that we wanted to do was going to go that way. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be, the word he used was ambitious, to try and get it agreed. We've got more chance of that getting agreed going that way, but nothing's guaranteed because it is, of course, the council that we're dealing with. So, since we're going to be putting planning in to extend the house that way, this room will always be the living room. So it's going to be the room that's not really going to move, apart from maybe a steel being put in that wall. So part of making this house habitable and making it nice is this lovely floorboarded floor here. We're going to sand it with this machine that I have hired from HSS for a very cheap price. But before we do that, I've got to go around with a lump hammer and a centre punch and knock all the nail heads down so they're below the surface of the wood, because if I catch a nail on that machine, I'll be getting quite a large bill to repair it. So we'll start knocking these down, we'll get the sand pad on that, give it a sweep before we do it, and hopefully you'll start to see the wood come back to life. No. Right, back. Now, whilst this looks like it doesn't take long, it certainly does. And in fact, it's like anything, the key is in the preparation. floor swept. So we've knocked all the nail legs down, we've took the staples out of the floorboards that were actually holding the underlay down, gripper rods removed, we give it a sweep. Now we're ready to turn the sander on and just give it a once over up and down. We're going to be using 80 grit paper. I've got plenty of pads there, plenty of bags. I can't wait to see the transformation.
Now, if I'm being honest, I thought sanding the floor would be a 5-minute job, but in reality it took 6 hours, it's very noisy and it's incredibly dusty, but the results are well worth it. And here is a before and after. Now one of the rooms is starting to look pretty, I'd like to say the same about the hallway and stairs. However, it's presented itself with a problem.
And that issue is damp. Crack down there, crack along this wall, shed loads of damp. Excuse me, dog. Be quiet. Go around. I think this damp is caused by that behemoth of a tree. Obviously all the water's battering the wall, running down it, heating comes on. The wallpaper had blown away from this wall, so there was a gap. You can hear plaster. This is a hollow wall. This one, all blown. So I think we're gonna have to knock all this off. However, it's kind of given me a thought. Now, we have a fantastic view out of this window. You can just see the top, if the rain doesn't distort it. Just see the top of Manchester there. You can actually see Runcorn over there. Anyway, what I'm thinking, this staircase is quite narrow. So when we do the extension, that door, that's the side door, which is there, is going to disappear. So why not extend that landing across the width of this staircase so we have a 1 meter gap, and then I can have a chandelier dropping all the way down the stairs there. It'll look really smart, and then obviously we'll have the floor to ceiling glass window, and it'll actually make it symmetrical in that opening rather than having a skinny gap there and a wide gap there. The only issue with that is I was an electrician. Well, I still am an electrician, but I used to work for an electrical contractor, and I know how much decorative lighting costs. So I think if we do that, I may have to make something to keep the cost down, but I'll show you from this perspective what I'm actually on about. Staircase. When we do the extension, that will become all kitchen living space. So this wall will go, which is a supporting wall. That will stay. These doors will get expanded into bifolds, but it means that this door has disappeared and this downstairs toilet could become a bit bigger, or it could move that way. So this return on the stairs could effectively move here, making that landing 2 meters wide, and we'll have a lovely chandelier dropping down all the way from the ceiling into the middle here. I think it'll look quite smart. Further update, Sophie's stepdad Jez has done this room, and then Sophie's finished the bottom off today. So this one's stripped. We've just got to go around the areas and do the ceiling, but I don't really like how that's coming off. It's like leaving wood chip on the ceiling. So that's going to be not very nice to get off. It's not the best. Lovely chandelier. And then if we come into the living room, we actually finished this one yesterday. Obviously the ceiling still needs doing, but it still stinks in this room. And my dad has been finishing off today while we went for lunch with our friends. My dad's done this room, started the ceiling, but this needs to come off. Once we get all this done, I'm going to pull some hatches up in the floor, see where the gas pipes run for that. That's going to get capped off because it's bad. And then we can start getting some runs in then for the rewire.
But before the rewire could commence, it would have to wait. The next job at hand are these massive trees. To tackle this, I called in my cousins Chris and Ol. They focused on pruning the trees by hand to ensure there wasn't mass destruction when we finally sliced through the trunk.
Pose for the gram. It's not a photo, it's a video. How do you feel about the tree chop?
Well, I've been here an hour and I've probably done more than a tree surgeon would do.
Not quite sure that's true, but to massage your ego, we'll say it is. Whilst the smaller branches were falling, I began cutting them up and keeping anything girthy for the log pile, which I will dry out and burn on the fire once the house is finished. Then Grandad came along and he also helped chop the leaves up, because the speed that Chris was chopping them down, I couldn't keep up with getting rid of the waste to make more room to chop the logs.
I'm not gonna lie, it's absolutely breaking my heart getting rid of these. They're 60 years old, but that one's getting under the footings of the house. This one's lifting everything, and it's just making moss grow on the roof. It's making it dark, so yeah, I've got to go. And before anyone moans, I checked with the council. I'm allowed to do this. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Hey, have you seen the size of that stump? You were right about it cushioning the fall.
Yeah.
Mate, we've only logged half of the tree. I've got a plan for this, which I'll talk to you about in a second. If we come through here, first of all, just take a look at the light there. And if we just come into the garage, skip is also full. Just look at how much wood this tree has produced. It's absolutely ridiculous. Are you ready? Half of one tree, and there's 3 to go. These all need splitting down. In the middle, behind the thinner stuff, is logs that will be ready to burn in about a year's time once this is dried. And the thinner stuff is just basically going to become kindling. But that is half a tree. And it's actually 3 logs deep down there. And there's a hell of a lot more to come. I'm going to make the dining table out of that. And if you just look at how thick this stump is, some would say it's thicker than you. Whoa-hey! That's actually 600mm wide, same as that. Huge V. Plan is, we're going to get that jacked up on some ladders, and then we're going to cut it into 50mm slabs all the way down. I'm going to aim for about 2.5 meters, which comes to about there, so we can get rid of this end. But as it gets wider, what you'll get is that wave in the table, and then we can make an epoxy dining table. That is the plan for this. Next, that's got to go, all that's got to go, path's got to be dug up, and then hopefully we can start clearing this land back. But my biggest worry is this. If you look at this stump, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, just look at the rings in that. We could sit here and count them, but there's way too many. It's actually lifted all of these flags. I think that drain's blocked because of it. There's probably a root in it, but my biggest worry is there's no brickwork fracture here, but there is here. It's fractured there, and it doesn't come all the way down, so I'm not worried. But I reckon when we pull the floor up inside, because it is a suspended floor, I think we're going to see some of these. And if we do, that poses a huge problem. Now, the other problem we have is the extension footing will start here, which is going to clash with all this. So that potentially leaves me with a huge dilemma. And I need to get a stump grinder to come and get rid of this and see how deep it goes. And then what you can see here is Sophie putting the bins out, but all of this branchery and leaves is a fake hedge that we've built, because I'm not going to sit here and fill 20 skips full of that. I'm going to get someone to come and just shred it up. At this point, I don't really care what it costs, I just want it gone. I've got to chop this big one down, but there's a big risk that poses with that one. It could end up hitting the house. So I'm probably going to take the branches off so it's shorter and then get it to fall this way in the same orientation of that tree. So there we go, 2 weeks of owning the house. Trees are gone, floors sanded. What else have we done? Wallpaper stripped. Sofas have come. In fact, yeah, let's show you this. Bit of Facebook Marketplace genius here. We just come around the back. What? The flooring Sophie's mum and Sophie have cut this down so we can actually get to the bottom, because this is where there's another major catastrophe. Look at this. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the supporting wall. And no wonder it's fell, because there's not a single tie put in there. So all of that needs knocking down, but that's going to produce a hell of a lot of waste. So what I'm going to do is get a chipper or a crusher, crush it all up to make it into basically like type 1 MOT, and then we'll use that for backfilling when the extension goes on. But living room, let's go in here. So at the minute I can't show you to the full effect, but if I just put the horrible living room light on, horrible yellow light, we have actually bought a sofa. Now, the armchair was from the British Heart Foundation, was 80 quid. This is actually a French Connection sofa, which is the same one that we have in the cottage in Wales, but the one in Wales is like a teal blue colour. This one's grey. That was a Facebook Marketplace purchase for £200, 4 miles from where I live, which I picked up today. And then, if we just come through here and turn this light on, my God, that's awful lighting. We've actually bought a TV stand, a sideboard, a table for the side of whatever it's called, the chairs, and a coffee table. That was all brand new from the British Heart Foundation, because apparently, news to me, they have companies that give them stuff to sell, or maybe they buy it, I don't know, and the profit goes to charity. That was all brand new. So this living room, all we've got to do is basically sand the walls, touch up a few cracks, get some paint on, change that light just so it's a bit more aesthetically pleasing. Nice lamp. And this living room has cost £600 to basically get okay, because with our new plans, this actually doesn't change. However,
and I'll reveal the new plans once we know everything has been agreed with the council. Now, you're probably wondering, how much did we save by chopping the trees ourselves? Well, in the next episode, I'm going to go through all the log splitting and actually cutting it down into slabs, because that is another thing that we did. And it's something that a tree surgeon wouldn't do. They wouldn't slab it, they would log it, but it was going to be a premium of a price. So originally, for 3 trees, I was quoted £3,000 plus VAT. So that would have come in at £3,600 just to chop the trees down. The question I had for the guys there was, does that include splitting everything for logs? And they said, no, if you want everything splitting for logs, you need to add another £700 onto that. So that would have come in at £4,300 to cut the trees down. The £3,600 price was just for everything to be taken away, shredded, and left with no waste. But obviously, with those trees being a part of this house for 60 years, I didn't want to see them go to waste. I know burning them's a bit sacrilege, but parts of those trees will become furniture, and we'll show you how I do that. And I'll show you how I do that in the next episode. So, for myself to cut the trees down, it didn't cost anywhere near as much. I bought a chainsaw for £120, a Parker brand one. It came with 3 chains, 2-stroke, and some chain oil. Since then, I spent about 60 quid on extra chain oil and about £10 on 2-stroke. I've also probably spent about 40 quid on petrol. And then on top of that, I've also gone through to the point where I am now, which you haven't seen yet, with everything chopped away and put in the garage and split and slabbed. I went through around 12 chains. And in total, with finding a few deals on Amazon, I spent about £200 on chains. So that brings us in at a total cost of £430, which I don't think is too bad. It's actually 10% of the original cost that I was quoted to cut the trees. However, the costs are not finished there. Although we've done the work ourselves for around 10% of the original price, I've still got to get rid of the tree stumps, and I've still got to get rid of all the brambly waste. And that is where we'll pick it up in the next episode. If you enjoy watching content like this, where I can show you how to save money by doing jobs on your own property rather than getting contractors in, please consider subscribing.